and welcome back to my video series on Power BI Basics. Today we're going to be covering matrices, which is a type of visual in Power BI, very similar to a pivot table in Excel. If you have not watched any of my previous videos in this series, please consider doing that. We're currently working on a basic series where we kind of walk you through Power BI from the ground up, and the videos build on top of each other. That's not to say that you're not going to find this video helpful if you're just looking for something on matrices, but if you're looking to learn Power BI, there is a series out here, and we're building it, and we're learning together. So, how do you build a matrix in Power BI? Well, first, let's look at kind of the file I have open. So this is the sales and return sample from Microsoft. It's a sample dashboard that they put together that if you Google sales and return sample v 2019-12, it'll come up. It's free on their GitHub. You can go ahead and you can download it. And once you open that up, what I've done is I've gone through and I've created a new page in Power BI. And you create a new page in Power BI by clicking this little plus icon, which will then give you a new page to design on. We already covered this in the table visual, video. But to create a new visual in Power BI, what you do is you click this new visual button right here, and that will create a new visual. You then can set that visual to a matrix by clicking right here as a matrix table. So now, very similar to Excel, you're going to have a rows, a columns, and a values. You will not have a filter because you can do that by either using this filter panel over here and applying the filter on the visual right up here, or you can apply a filter by creating a slicer. So when you're creating a matrix, you will not have the filter. And again, that's just if you're comparing this directly to Excel. But in order to build a table, what you can then do is you can then bring over, for example, a month into the rows here. And you can then bring in a week, right? So as you can see here, and I'm going to zoom in a little. So as you can see here, we're now having kind of, right, all of our collapsing rows. So we have our month, and then we have the week within that. We can then bring over into our columns, for example, maybe age, right? So we could bring in our age bucket right up here, and that is going to give me an error because the data model is not appropriately set up. So if you ever get that, it's giving me that error because there's not a correct relationship between these columns. So just as a heads up, that's what that was. But what you can then do, and let's find the one that there's a customer, hopefully a correct relationship for. Okay, so I brought over age. So here we go. We now have our columns here. So we've got 15, 20, 21, 30. And then finally, we need to bring in a value for it to summarize. In this case, I'm going to bring in units, right? So we have a total up top. We have the values. We have got a total row down here and a total row down here. So it functions a lot like a Excel pivot table. And if you look right here, item filter on month, right? But we can go through. And you can change the way that these are aggregating by clicking this little arrow and changing the filter over here. So currently it's a sum, but you could change it to an average, a min, a max, a count, a standard deviation, a variance, or a median. You can also bring over multiple columns for it to aggregate on. So right now I just brought over unit, right? But we could bring over something like amount. So, right, it's like here's our total units and here's our total amounts. If we want to rename these columns for this visual, you can right click and then you should be able to go rename here and rename for this visual. Or you could double click in. So like if I wanted to call this units, right, I could go ahead and do it. For right now, I'm going to remove amount just because it makes our table look a lot cleaner. In Power BI, you're also going to have a ton of formatting options. So you can either do on visual formatting, which is where you double click the part that you want to change, and I might not have on object interactions turned on. That's a setting you need to enable. But you should be able to, if you enable it, double click. And then you can also go ahead and you can expand the formatting pane by clicking this right over here. So here's the formatting pane. There are going to be so many formatting options in this that we will not be able to cover them all in this video. Actually, if you're interested in how you make visuals pretty, I'm currently doing a live stream series where I'm kind of intermittently streaming. I don't have a schedule yet, but shout out to that. There's a playlist called Building a Power BI Portfolio Project. Right now, I think there's almost an hour's worth of content on there of just me building and talking. Might get a little tired of my voice, but shout out to that. But let's go through a few kind of core settings with the matrix visual. So the first is we're going to cover, it's going to be total rows. So column subtotals are something we probably want to turn off. So you can turn that off by just here. And so like if you notice that row's gone. Most people like row subtotals. You can change this away from a row by just away from the total label. So if this was an average, right, you could change this to average right here by clicking that. You also can then actually change some formattings on. So like you can apply specific settings to a column, but you can also change some formatting in here by searching color. And color is going to bring up all of these color settings that you're doing. So one of the things a lot of people like to change is they like to get rid of the blue. So they might go with something a more sensible black. So there you go. I just changed that to a black. You also can then turn on blank rows. So like if you wanted to separate it, and this is actually a new feature for the matrix, so you can turn on blank rows here. So this will allow you to, see how things are going. And you can also change the blank rows colors. Like if I wanted to make this purple, doesn't look good, but there is a way to do this. Or here you can also turn on the border on those. But finally, a lot of people ask, how do you turn off the banding? Here's how you turn off the banding. You just go right here and you go white. So here's a lot more simple looking pivot. Other than that, a few things I'm going to be kind of calling out is they do have now, and this is a new feature in the Matrix Visual, layout and style presets. These are things that you can actually set in and kind of use them as a good starting point. Kind of coming through here. So if you notice, this is kind of a good place to get started. I tend to like the default, and then I tend to like so there's an outline very similar. This is very similar to Excel or tabular, right? I tend to like either tabular or compact. And then you can also change the indentation. So when you expand this, right, it's way indented, or now it's less indented. But yeah, and the difference here is if we go with the tabular, right, there's the tabular coming through. So this is a good starting place with some formatting options. All right, so that's going to be the end of our video on Power BI matrices. Let's review what we learned how to do. So we learned how to create a matrix itself. We learned the components of the matrix. We looked at formatting options, and in particular with formatting options, what we looked at was how to turn on and off totals, how to change and alter background color, and then how to kind of control some of the default layout styles as maybe a starting point. There's a million other things that can go on with matrices. So if you have any additional comments or questions I didn't answer, or feedback or anything that I didn't answer, I didn't cover, leave it in the comments, because I will go through and I will respond. I'm still a new channel. I'm still building. And if you're interested in seeing more videos like this, subscribe. I promise you my tutorials are only getting better. I think just a few videos ago I got comfortable with being on camera. So come along for the journey. We're here to learn together and grow together. So thank you for watching. Have a good evening.